Welcome to Lazy Reviews. My name is Arvid, and I'm making this follow-up to my Scream franchise review, where I reviewed the first 5 movies. Given that it just came out, I haven't been able to get any screenshots, anything for you to enjoy in this review, so aside from maybe a few pictures I can find online, officially released, this will only be an audio review, which honestly is not too different from the other reviews I do. I will make this a spoiler-free review as much as I can at least, given that especially, at least in my opinion, my spoiler-free review of the Scream franchise was much better than the spoiler one. So I see this as an extension to that one, not so much my spoiler review. So yes, Scream 6 came out in 2023. So this movie follows all the characters who survived the previous movie. So it's a direct sequel in that sense. They moved city, they're no longer in the same place as before. The younger sister is now attending college, and as the movie itself points out, this does borrow a lot from Scream 2 in terms of setup, in terms of what happens in the movie. It doesn't do it too much, whereas Scream 2 was actually just mostly at this college. This is taking place in the city, with the college being in the city. In that sense, it actually is interesting to see this slasher take place in an urban environment. In some scenes, it makes it quite unbelievable, but it is actually nice. It's the first one in the franchise to take it out of this suburban community and put it in a setting where actually there are plenty of people around. It does up the stakes in some ways, and it does mean that they have to figure out, they can play with different things, they can put the murderer and the victims in different situations that are new to the genre, and actually in some senses actually not done that often in slasher movies. I think one movie I can think of that on paper probably should have done it but didn't do it is Jason Takes Manhattan, which is Friday the 13th Part 8, where the last 20-30 minutes of the movie takes place in Manhattan, but it's just bonkers. I do like the movie, but that's not how to do this right. Does this movie put a slasher villain in an urban environment? Does this one do it right? I'm not so sure about it. It's only used in 2 scenes. I would say only 2 scenes. There might be a third scene that I forgot about. And one of the scenes is effective, and I will talk about that a slightly bit later. The other scene is actually awful. Once the movie has reached its climax, its finale, you will understand why that scene is really bad. The execution of it is not bad. The execution of it is okay. That is actually also bad. Okay, I'll go back to talking about the plot. So the older sister, the main protagonist of the first movie of the Scream 5, or Scream as it was called, she is being this protective parent type to her younger sister. And there's a lot of unresolved things between them where the younger sister just wants to move on with her life and not let this traumatic event be the centerpiece for the rest of her life, a trauma she can't escape. The bigger sister actually takes a lot from Sidney Prescott in that this does define her personality, this does define her character. This will become her life. It starts out with her seeking therapy. This therapist doesn't want to help her because she reveals that she actually enjoyed killing the boyfriend in the previous movie. Spoiler, sorry. This is revealed very quickly. I mean, this is within the first 10 minutes or so hopefully this won't spoil it too much. And the therapist reveals that the second she says, killing him felt right, I think that's the word, the phrasing she uses. And that's honestly not too bad, because this is a person who tried to kill you and your sister and killed your friends. So killing him as a revenge, isn't that okay to talk to your therapist about it? But the therapist also understands it as now she confesses to him that she wants to commit more murders. So that's terrible. That's I don't know. Is that realistic? I have only minimal experience with therapists myself, psychologist. I know several people who go to therapy sessions. I don't think this is very realistic. So it's a bit bullshit, to be honest, in my opinion. And it's also revealed that she is, after the events of the previous movie, a lot of conspiracy theories emerged to portray her as the real villain, the one who actually orchestrated these murders. This is a very big part of the plot, that when the new murders begin, she is, at least initially, blamed for them. A fairly early scene does mean that she has a very solid alibi, but at least people believe she did it. Both the previous killings and the current killings that are going on around city in the beginning of the movie. And I really did think, is this a realistic plot? Is it realistic to believe that people are so prone to believe conspiracy theories, to believe the worst in people? That's a phrase in this movie, that the people want to believe the worst in people. That's why it was so easy to spread these lies about her, that she was the real culprit, the mastermind behind these murders. I think it honestly, in this day and age, a lot of people would buy into her, believing and she was the main culprit. So maybe it's not unrealistic. The only thing is there's so many people who've witnessed her being in the right in the previous movie, but of course they wouldn't necessarily listen to her. That even though there are witnesses that can testify her innocence, people wouldn't believe it still. Not too unrealistic. But one thing I absolutely hate this movie for is that Gale Weathers is back. Gale Weathers had an arc spanning the last 5 movies where she went from being an insufferable, selfish asshole to redeeming herself slowly. By the end of the 5th movie, I would say she probably had totally redeemed herself as a character. She was on the right path. In this movie, she is a terrible person. She uses the story of the events occurring in the previous movie to further her career, to create. She becomes this very rich person, this very rich, successful person. Her penthouse apartment is huge. She has a boy toy boyfriend. All the build-up of her character until the 6th movie is completely ruined because this movie wants to make her bad. And it's revealed that in the book she wrote, she actually portrayed the protagonist of the previous movie and of this movie as being a born killer, I guess, because she wanted to create a sensation about this. She wanted to sell the book, to earn money. She's even more selfish than she's ever been. And I don't know why they decided to make this her character arc. Actually, I do know. I don't want to spoil it. There is probably a good reason why they want to do this. It might have something to do with red herring and to justifying something. But that's not excuse enough. That is actually, I do hate when movies do this, when franchises do this, sequels do this, that they rewrite a character just to fit not even the current narrative, but just a plot point or a plot device in the new setting that does just a complete disservice to what this character is, and this movie does that. But yes, she is in it, and she is a bad person. They do play nicely with all the things that had happened to her before, so now when someone tries to punch her, she dodges the punch because she's been punched so many times being a reporter. So now she's actually both a reporter and she's writing books, but she's actually almost not reporting at all. So I don't know exactly what her character is doing anymore because she stopped being a reporter, but she's at the scene reporting, only that she's maybe not. Or did she write her book, became famous on that, and returned to journalism? It's not really well explained. And I can spoil this. It's a minor spoiler. When these murders start happening again, she tries to get on the side of a protagonist and her sister, that she wants to help them catch the new murderer. But it's then revealed that actually she's still an asshole and she only pretends to want to help them to then use all the information they give her in her journalism in spreading this information. And that actually does mean that the murderer can track down people that he probably shouldn't be tracking down because it's bad for the business called staying alive. Sorry, that was a bad joke. I just couldn't think of anything better. And I hate how they do this to her character. Also, I kept referring to the murders that started happening again. So I should note that the movie opens up quite well. Now, instead of using phone calls all the time, they do introduce texts a lot. Text messages means more. By introducing, I actually should say the previous movie did that as well, so it's not completely new. But I do like it because people today text more than they call, so it's nice that they use both things. And it starts off with this, call and text message that then leads to a kill. Immediately revealed who the killer is, and it's 2 film students plotted. And I'm not spoiling this because this is revealed in the first 5 minutes. 2 film students who were in the class of our main lead, because of course our protagonists are now studying media science or having film classes at university, because The second movie did it. All the other movies have people doing movie classes all the time, film classes all the time. So this movie has to do it as well. And it's revealed that they were in the class of at least some of our protagonists, and that they then conspired to finish the movie that the boyfriend tried to make in the previous movie in Scream 5. But they are then stopped by the new Ghostface killer, who are killing them because the new Ghostface killer wants to be the one enacting the revenge. We don't know what the revenge is for yet, but it is explained that it's revenge, and they want to reveal the true story about a protagonist, suggesting that they want to reveal that our protagonists are the real culprits of the previous movie. But that doesn't make sense, because the Ghostface killer would then know that that's not the case. Honestly, this movie's plot is bad. The plot is really stupid. There are a few things you can explain away the further you go along in the movie, but a lot of it is really stupid. And we get to a scene now that is a big reason for why I dislike this this plot. So we have our protagonist. It's not Halloween yet. It's the day before Halloween, I think, or 2 days before. I don't really understand because I don't know what it's like celebrating Halloween in the States. Does Halloween take place over multiple nights? Because there's one Halloween party, then there are people walking around in costumes at night. Then there is the next day, where it's the day that people trick and treat. Probably. And then there's the Halloween the night the next day. So it's multiple days of Halloween with multiple days of people dressing up and partying. And actually, it makes sense that the events of this movie takes place during Halloween, because it's the only reason why the Ghostface killer can blend in among other people, especially because other people are dressing up as the Ghostface killer. So that actually makes sense for the plot. But what doesn't make sense is that right after these murders start happening, they call our protagonist, or the Ghostface killer call the protagonist, saying, "I want to reveal who you are to the rest of the world." Immediately tries to kill the protagonist and her sister. So they run into a shop. He goes in, stabs 2 people. The shop owner shoots at the killer. Then the killer kind of falls behind some shelves. Now, I'll try to explain the layout of the scene. It's a very small convenience store. Of course, there are 2 people dead near the front of it. The desk with the cashier is right at the door, and there might be 2 or 3 meters between him and the 2 protagonists of the 2 sisters. With the Ghostface killer probably being shotgunned down in the middle of all of this. Instead of just telling the 2 sisters to run out the front door and escape, because the guy is still holding a shotgun, the guy says, take the back door, and tries to get keys out for them to unlock the back door. Meaning that instead of doing something that would take 1 second and they would be out of the situation, they waste all this time, and of course he ends up dying as a reason. This is so bad. And again, this scene doesn't make sense when you hear some of the motivation later in the movie. This is an awful scene in hindsight. It's a bad scene as it is because it's really, really, really stupid. And it's an awful scene in hindsight. And I do realize I actually don't want to I'll talk about everything going on in this movie. So I'll mention a few things that didn't work. This movie wants you to believe that people living in apartments will have ladders lying around. Not one of those foldable ladders, because that kind of makes sense. A lot of people, if the ceiling is high enough up, or if you're a short enough person, you kind of need one of those around if you need to change light bulbs. But no, this guy has a ladder lying around that is 5 meters? 10 meters? It's long enough to reach from one apartment to the apartment in front of it, given that there's a small alley between them. But it has to be 4 or 5 meters, if not more. The person just has that in the flat. I think it might look like a ladder you can actually assemble with like parts, so you can make it longer and shorter for how much you need. And I don't know why it would then be sturdy enough for this, because this might just be a ladder design that I don't understand. In that case, I'm sorry. It's just, to me, it was a really stupid plot thing that this was so unrealistic to believe. It does also have other elements that are a bit unbelievable, but then when you watch the rest of the movie, most of it is somewhat explained away, so I can give much of it a pass, even if it's a bit weird. You have to suspend your disbelief a little bit to trust the plot of this movie. And but honestly, what really gets bad is that towards the end of the movie, and I will not talk about individual performances here because they would spoil it, but the acting is so bad towards the end of the movie. None of the acting is not good for the entire movie, but at the end of the movie, it's absolutely terrible. It's awful, and the character decisions, the character motivation, the background, what all the things at the end of the movie is really not good. It's not the worst I've seen, but it's not good. Again, suspend disbelief. It's just, it's not good. What I do like about the movie, the only thing I like about it, actually, no, I should say one more thing that's frustrating. So yeah, it does have some of the people from the previous movie. It does have a character, my favorite character in the previous movie, who is the lesbian or bisexual movie buff girl. Unfortunately, I don't like her in this movie. She takes over the role of, what was it, Miller? No, Miles? The movie buff in the first 2-3 Scream movies. This nerd, this virgin nerd who is pathetic and loves movies, she takes his role. She was already kind of being the new him in the previous film, but this one she's not just overdoing it. I get annoyed with how many times she has to say franchise in this movie. And she's also the one pointing out all these rules about franchises. And there's another scene with another recurring character where they have to show off and battle about movie knowledge. And it's so bad. It's so frustrating. I know that nerds today are sort of cool, and that's a good thing. And that these two, supposedly at least, quite attractive women are sitting there battling about being the biggest nerd. The symbolic value of that, or what it tries to convey about nerd culture, you might be able to appreciate that, but it's a bad scene. It's bad character development. Also, I should say Sidney Prescott is not in this movie. It said that she got the happy ending and now has a family. So sure, fine. I don't know how she managed to do all that in 1 year, because she didn't have that in the previous movie, but now she does. But sure, only 1 year passed between these two events. So I mentioned that I had something good to say, and the kills are good. Some of the kills are actually really good. It has some really good, nice murders. And the way they don't do it too much, but they do have this subplot or even part of the main plot going on with the lead character if she might be a serial killer in the making. I do like that idea. It is sequel baiting in that way. Again, that's not spoiling too much, but it is sequel baiting in that way. But the kills are why I don't hate this movie. Without the kills, this would have been an easy 2-star rating on Letterboxd. I did give it a 2.5 because at least there's something to look at. I should also know. So one of the things that when they talk about what this kind of movie has to do, because that's what they do in all of the Scream movies, that what that role is in the movie franchise. And this one, it says, subvert your expectations. It doesn't do that. The ending of this movie is so much what we have seen before. It's not really spectacular in any way. This movie doesn't subvert your expectations at all. No. When you've already seen the other movies did subvert your expectations already. This movie does nothing new. Not really. If people want to argue that this one thing is new, I will not spoil it. Then yes, but really, is that enough to subvert your expectations? No, it is not. Also, I did call it, so my expectations were not subverted. Oh god, just remembered another awful line in the movie. There is this showdown. Oh, no, I can't spoil it. Someone just fought off someone dressed as the Ghostface Killer, and as in the second the Ghostface Killer is escaping this room situation, another person enters, and the person being attacked turns to the person and says, "Don't come any closer, I know who you are!" Like, accusing this person as being the Ghostface Killer that just attacked her. Oh, that was awful. I mean, knowing what the audience knows after finishing the movie, you might find some justification in this. But if you go by what the character in the movie knows at the time, it's abysmal. It's so bad. It's such a bad line. So, okay, I talked about this too much. Way too much, I can tell. So, final verdict. This is not a good movie. It's not the worst one in the franchise. Honestly, it's just... this is not a good franchise. I do think that the first Scream movie is better. The second one might be better. But this one is definitely the best one of the last 4 ones in the franchise. And that's all I can say. Hope you found this review useful. I don't know. There are probably worse things out there, so if you really want to see a slasher in the cinema, go ahead, but I can't recommend it.